Welcome back to Dice Paper Miniatures. I'm John, and in this episode, we actually get a chance to look at some of the cards for the upcoming Exiled Dead Warhammer Underworlds expansion pack for Harrow Deep. These actually go for pre-order tomorrow on Saturday, so better late than never, but here we are. Let's begin. So we're back at it, and we have the Exiled Dead preview of their cards. Not all of them, of course, just a little bit of a teaser. But it goes into a little bit more, too, of the lore of the Exiled Dead. So if you didn't see it, in the Adepticon preview live stream from a couple weeks back, they went on to say how Deintalos, the leader of this warband, was basically exiled by Nagash for his nefarious experiments. Yeah. I guess mixing electricity and magic is a no-go for Nagash. But in any event, it makes for an interesting warband. Visually, not necessarily quite what I was hoping for, although I'm a Soulblight Gravelords player as far as Age of Sigmar goes. So I was curious if there would be an application for this warband in my Soulblight Gravelord army, and it looks like there might be, but that's actually a separate video, which I'll have a link for that video towards the end of this one. All right, so let's keep going. So it goes on, the Exiled Dead is a large warband, and though the individual fighters don't seem too impressive at first glance, they're more than the sum of their parts. Deintalos and his apprentice Markov are the key here. Your vampiric leader's dance dynamic ability can jolt his conductive arc walkers into bursts of lightning-fast violence, while Markov can conduct a similar trick with Regulus, the single, non-electrified zombie in the band. These mad scientists can even bring their fallen minions back to life, so the Exiled Dead will be very hard to wipe off the table as they bury their elven enemies in corpuscent corpses. Corpuscent corpses, sure. Resurrection comes at a price, however. Every zombie starts the game inspired, only to become uninspired after it's raised from the dead again. Yeah, so that's interesting. We don't get to see the inspired side of most of these, but we do have their non-inspired side. So Deintalos, the Exile, he's conductive, which is interesting because his apprentice Markov is not. But with Dance Dynamic from Deintalos, action, pick move or attack. Each friendly conductive fighter, which technically he would also be considered a conductive fighter, can make one action of that kind, then place up to one friendly out-of-action conductive minion in an adjacent hex 2 or more hexes from each enemy fighter and give that minion one raise counter. Reactions cannot be used during this action. So that's interesting. I feel like there's probably going to be a little bit more of a skill cap with this particular warband. It has the potential, I think, for being pretty strong, but definitely a little bit more trickier, I think. Just looking at his stats, though, 3 movement, it's okay, it's average. 1 shield, a little on the weaker side, and 4 wounds. So he's got some okay wounds, but the 1 shield is a little... it's not the greatest. He's got the Draining Coil, and it has the Stagger keyword, 3 range, its magic does 1 damage. And he inspires when a friendly minion takes an enemy fighter out of action. Not the greatest inspiration mechanic, but that's just what it is. Now for Prentice Markov, stats are a little different. 3 movement, 2 dodge, 3 wounds. So a little bit more defensive, but 1 less wound. He's got the Bone Saw with the keyword Grievous. So it's only 1 range, 2 attack dice, but only 1 damage. But he does have the Puppeteer ability. So action, this fighter and a friendly Regulus can each make 1 action. Then place up to 1 friendly out of action Regulus in an empty hex within 2 hexes and give that Regulus 1 raise counter. Reactions cannot be used during this action. So the trick for both of these, if your opposing player's team gets victory points off of, killing or wounding your your warband. This warband, the minions themselves will likely be pretty fragile, which is great if you want to use those res mechanics to place them like strategically around the board with Deintalos or Prentice Markov's ability. But at the same time, you could just be feeding victory points to your opponent. That could be a thing. As a result, the Exiled Dead function almost as though composed of two synchronized units, Deintalos and his experiments and the Markov Regulus duo, giving them much more flexibility and some unexpected tricks. So here we have a spell, the Channeled Dynamism, gives all conductive fighters move 4 until the end of a phase. Coupled with Dance Dynamic, this offers your Arc Walkers some immense mobility. In one activation, you can shamble half your warband over to a skulking Skaven assassin who thought they were at a safe distance. It's a nasty shock for an unwary opponent. Yeah, a lot of this movement, though, is pretty hinged upon your leader, Deintalos, staying, alive. The Exiled Dead's ready-to-play Rivals deck also offers some really thematic objectives, inspired by their leader's semi-scientific obsessions. All right. The dynamic chain, for instance, is scored by building a chain of conductive fighters across the board, including Deintalos. As a conductive fighter himself, you can move Deintalos around with his own dance dynamic, a really neat feature that helps him keep close behind his arc walkers. Yeah, this warband will definitely take some practice, I think, to get dialed in as far as a skill cap goes. Not only is it where he's most effective, it makes this objective simple to score. Time for a corpsey conga. Oof, some dad puns in there. It's interesting though, this is dual. Score this in an end phase if each surviving friendly conductive fighter is adjacent to one or more other friendly conductive fighters. All right. And those fighters are in a single group. I would like to know if you could comment below, is that part and those fighters are in a single group? Is that necessary? I'm not sure why that extra wording is there. What does that help shore up as far as the game mechanics go? But you do score 1 victory point, so there's that. All right, so as I was mentioning, your leader is kind of the core component for this warband, and they go on to say, Deintalos is truly the linchpin of this electro-animated warband, which will really shine for players who can strategize around a central hero and work hard to keep him safe. That new Skaven warband where everything triggers off the leader could be difficult keeping him up, and then facing that warband, and then the Shadeborn as well. The fact that they can just blink out from the shadows could make it difficult to keep Deintalos alive. So I mentioned at the beginning of this video that there were going to be rules for the Exiled Dead for Age of Sigmar. Their war scroll is a PDF link here in this article, as well as the Skittershank's Claw Pack and the Shadeborn. I'll have a separate video that goes into covering each of those new war scrolls. That link is right here in the upper right corner. So with that said, what do you think of this new warband, the Exiled Dead? Like I said, I feel like it has potential, but the skill cap's probably going to be a little higher for those players to take some time to really dial in how the different parts of this warband synergize. I'm interested in it. I do think the sculpts don't quite hit the same level of just cool factor that the Skittershank Claw Pack and the Shadeborn have, as well as some of the other models like the Crimson Court in particular. It's a little unfortunate because the Crimson Court hit it way out of the park for the Soulblight Gravelords. Even if you don't use them as an army in Age of Sigmar, they're just great models to use for your Vampire Lords. Whereas the normal zombies that we just got for the Soulblight last year, and you can tell these are kind of inspired by those. I just feel like these didn't quite push the envelope enough, especially since these are supposed to be kind of like ghastly, really horrific creations that even Nagash was not cool with. The story is cool, the lore behind them, but the visuals just aren't quite there. I think Deintalos is pretty close to where I think it could be, but the zombies, and then definitely Regulus, the one non-arc walker, he's really just kind of plain, and that's not, hopefully no offense to the design team, but yeah, I'd be curious to know what were some of those decisions in the studio that kind of led to where this warband ended up at, visually speaking. But those are my thoughts. I'd love to get your thoughts below. And if you haven't yet and you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing, hitting that notification bell, and sharing this content It does help with the growth of the channel, and it's greatly appreciated. That's it for this one. As I said, there is another video following this one shortly that goes into the individual war scrolls for not only the Exiled Dead, the Skittershanks Claw Pack, and the Shadeborn. So with that said, be safe, take care, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye-bye.